Hey guys, it's Marty from owingsart.com, and today I thought I'd take you along on a recent trip I took to the great state of Texas. Well, the great state of Texas is a long way from my home state of Minnesota, and one of the states you have to pass through is the beautiful state of Iowa, right in the middle of the United States. And Iowa is famous for a lot of things, but one thing it has that's pretty unique are the bridges of Madison County. These are 19th century bridges built by farmers and craftsmen who had to cross the rivers and streams in the Iowa farmland. And they're just fascinating bridges, and I think made even more famous by the movie with Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep. As you travel further on down south, you leave Des Moines, Iowa, and the bridges of Madison County, you head down 35 towards Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City, Missouri is just on the border of Missouri and Kansas, and it's really a beautiful city with lots of classic architecture and great things to see. But no visit to Kansas City is complete without having some of their famous barbecue. And one of the great places to go is Gates Barbecue. After Gates, I headed to the hotel, and we had a chance to sit poolside. This was one of the characters that was poolside at the hotel. Anyway, later on that next day, we traveled to the Union Depot in Kansas City, and this is one of the great architectural gems of the Midwest and just a fantastic train depot by any measure. It was built, I think, started building it in 1911 or so, and it was finished in 1912 or thereabouts, but one of the great rail stations in the United States. And really, when it opened, people just loved it, and it really put Kansas City on the map. It serviced tens of thousands of passengers during its heyday in the 20s, 30s, 40s, even on into the 60s. However, by the 1980s, rail transport in the United States had really slowed to a crawl, and the station had fallen into some disrepair. Here you can see it was abandoned at some point and down to maybe one or two trains a day running through it, and it had some water damage. And they thought about tearing the building down, and just at some point we're going to sell it off. And one of the architectural critics, Donald Hoffman, wrote this in the Kansas City Star. And he was just upset about the demise of the station, and they even had an auction where they sold off things and as they prepared to tear it down. But in the 1990s, some developers and city people got together, and they found the money to refurbish the station, and this is what it looks like today, almost a little bit more than 100 years after it was built. It's been restored to its former glory, and it is a really, really beautiful place. I could spend hours in this building just looking around at all the great architecture and the care that went into building. But here's a short walk through the Great Hall. Well, if you ever get to Kansas City yourself, I recommend that the Union Depot be one of your first stops. It's just an incredible place to visit. Well, time to get back on the road and head down towards Texas, but first you got to go through Oklahoma. And large part of Oklahoma and southern Kansas is just kind of flat and barren like this. You'll see an oil rig from time to time hanging out there, but eventually we got to the great state of Texas, or the Lone Star State as it's known, and traveled on past Dallas and Fort Worth on down to a town called Waco. Now, Waco, Texas is famous for a few things, but one of the things that stood out to me was this building. In the 1950s, a tornado rolled through town, destroyed most of the town, but this building was built so well that it withstood the tornado. Here's some other buildings and just a little look around. We stopped at this place called Magnolia Market, and it's featured in a TV show here in the United States called Fixer Upper, but people just made this journey here, and you can see this place was just packed. They call this place the Silos, and inside there's just this shop, and people just couldn't wait to get in there and buy things, and the place was just has kind of an outdoor play area and some food trucks and things, and we just had a great time stopping there for the day and visiting. I guess they call it Magnolia Farm Silos or something like that. Anyway, after that, right up the street is the Dr. Pepper Museum. This is where Dr. Pepper was bottled and made, and that's a soft drink for anybody who's not in the United States. Kind of a, it had its heyday. But inside here, there's this animatronic guy, and I thought he was kind of interesting.
Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you folks. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to finish up here, buy some more cigars, and get back to work. I'll let you get on with your visit. Thanks for coming, and enjoy yourself.
Kind of creepy, right? But at least he was affable, and it was just kind of interesting to see him. All throughout the Dr. Pepper Museum is this interesting art. They contracted illustrators, and there's even a famous painting right here. This is by a guy named Gil Elvgren, who's a very famous pinup artist and just an outstanding painter in his own right. And then, kind of these examples of the Pepsi bottling plant through the different eras. And here's one that was kind of cool. It's like from the 40s and 50s. It's just kind of a really cool, that's 7-Up, but Dr. Pepper made them as well. So that was pretty cool visiting that. And it was springtime in Texas, so it was nice to just get out and breathe fresh air. In Minnesota, it was still winter time at this point. So it was just like things like this. Look at this old Texas theater. I had a chance to sketch this, and I just fascinated with this theater. It was really cool looking and just kind of expresses Texas, built in 1912. They even, here's their waffle shaped like Texas. And after that, headed down towards the Gulf of Mexico. But before that, there's a stop in Houston, Texas that we had to make. And here it is. There's the city of Houston. But more importantly, we were headed to NASA. So the Johnson Space Center in NASA is really a cool visit. And here's just a little tour around it.
You are now leaving the museum and entering the Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center, the home of human spaceflight and home to the thousands of dedicated men and women who work here. This isn't an exhibit or a theme park. This is the real thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. The one and only World Famous Apollo Mission Control. So thank you so much for coming out to Mission Control and enjoy the rest of the tour. All right, this way, ladies and gentlemen.
Neil, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
I watched as a kid.
As did I.
It was fascinating. That's amazing. Yes. So the Johnson Space Center is this sprawling, huge complex in the middle of, Houston, or just south of Houston, but they have this area where you can go look at the rockets that were used in the early parts of the manned spaceflight era in the United States while they were working on the Apollo missions. Here's some of the rockets that are kind of out there, and you can see that's a little like a launch vehicle that took the rockets out to the space pad, launch pad. But the most important and greatest, coolest thing to see there is inside this building is this huge, enormous Mercury 7 rocket that was used to sort of take the space, take men to space and eventually the moon. And you can see how huge this thing is. 3 huge sections, and then this front capsule section, all to have just a few guys, like 3 guys in that little tiny capsule right there in the tip of the spacecraft. You basically had a bomb attached to you and you were hurtled into space and you had to go to the moon. Also at the Johnson Space Center, by the way, is this Independence shuttle. It's the shuttle Independence. It was never, I don't think, used in space service, but it was used as a trainer, and they would take the pilots up and practice landing with this shuttle. I had a chance to draw it. it was a lot of fun seeing that. But mostly it was just a great thrill for my son Ethan, who just loves NASA and all things space. So just seeing him there made me happy. This is the town of Porte, Texas, down along the Gulf of Mexico, and here's some of the things I saw when I was there. Thanks, though. And no trip to the south is complete without a stop at the Waffle House. Family of 3 got fed for less than $20. And so pretty cool. And then you can see the gas prices were pretty low. That's $1.98 per gallon. So that's pretty cheap for gas. And then it was time to head back home. And because we wanted to make a few stops as we drove up through the heart of Texas back up to Kansas City, Missouri. And here's some of the roadway along the Texas Turnpike, and you see some of this there, lots of these oil rigs everywhere. Before we left Texas, I had to stop into this boot shop, and I did a little sketching of that. It was really fun. They had a great variety of stuff. Here's some sights you might see in Texas too. Big old ranches and big old mansions. I had to leave early to get up to Iowa, and I wanted to stop in a place called LeClaire, Iowa. This is what the roads look like a little bit in Iowa. It's pretty open. LeClaire, Iowa is situated in the Mississippi River Valley, and it's got a place called the Antique Archaeology, which is a small place, but there's these guys called American Pickers, and they go around looking for antiques and stuff, and I just love that. It's a TV show, and I'm just fascinated by the stuff they find. But traveling up through the valley, I had to make a stop in a place called Dubuque, Iowa. Dubuque, Iowa is kind of famous for its as the United States pork producer, but I think since maybe the late 90s or mid 90s, it's not as economically vibrant as it always was or was before. But what Dubuque has is just an incredible arrangement and variety of preserved 19th century and early 20th century buildings. You can see it's like a time capsule here in Dubuque, and I'm so glad the people of Dubuque haven't torn these buildings down, because they're really cool to see. And so cool, I mean, I have to paint them. I feel compelled to draw, sketch, and paint these cool old buildings. They just have such historical significance. You can see a little snow on the side of the road, not quite spring, as they head back up toward Minnesota. And you'll see those farmhouses everywhere. And as you pass through the towns that dot the Mississippi River Valley, this is just what a typical town might look like, with some of the old buildings there, and nice roads and vistas. You get along the river valley, you can look out over the valley and see for miles and miles on a clear day. You might see a few of these guys as you drive in the rural area, these farmers getting their spring planting, and you might hear this sound. After a long trip, it was fun to just head home, but I'll never forget the friendly people in the Lone Star State. If you ever get a chance to visit Texas, I hope you take it. It's a pretty cool place. And I know it's been a while since I posted, and this is more of a travel log, but I threw some art in there because I did a lot of sketching while I was on the trip, so I thought I'd just make it an art adventure. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment. You know I love to hear from you. And be great if you could tell me a little bit about what your last trip was. All right, well, this is Marty for owingsart.com. Thanks for coming along with me today, and I'll talk to you soon. So long, everybody. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to check out owingsart.com.